This is Gabi Kirk, and I'm an editor with the environment page of Jadaliyya. I'm here today with Professor Sophia Stamatopoulou-Robbins, Assistant Professor of Anthropology at Bard College. Her book, Waste Siege, The Life of Infrastructure in Palestine, out last year with Stanford University Press, just won the Middle East Studies Association's Albert Hourani Book Award. Congratulations. And she's also the author of the recent essential readings on land, water, and the environment in the Israeli Occupied Palestinian Territories. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Stamatopoulou-Robbins. So, what relevance does studying land, water, and the environment in the Israeli Occupied Palestinian Territories have for our current political moment?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question and for having me on today. I would say that our current political moment is marked, at least in part, by a big push by some people to have us think globally about the environment and about climate change in particular. So thinking about humans as a species and how we have impacted the planet and brought climate change about. But as many people have pointed out, we can't let that push to think globally prevent us from understanding how environmental harm is unevenly distributed. I think we also can't let that push to think globally prevent us from understanding the ways in which political and economic arrangements and relations of power shape that uneven distribution of harm. So another way to put it is that unequal distribution of harm, environmental harm in particular, is not a coincidence, and it's determined by how humans differentially value other humans and by what role the environment, land, and water play in the way that humans value each other.
So you've put together a wonderful list for readers of the essential readings on land, water, and environment in the occupied Palestinian territories teachings. What amendment would you make to the canon on teaching the environment in the occupied Palestinian territories?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I guess I'll start by saying I don't really think that there is a canon yet on teaching the environment in the occupied Palestinian territories. So there's not exactly something there to amend, even though there are a lot of people, or at least a handful of people I can think of, who are probably teaching courses like environmental justice in Palestine or environmental justice in the occupied territories. But I would say that most English-speaking people in the West are mainly hearing through mainstream media certain stories that repeat. So how Israeli environmentalism is helping save Israel-Palestine, or how that environmentalism is getting translated into green technologies that are then being developed and sold by Israeli companies and disseminated across the world to help save the environment in the rest of the world. So I think that the main intervention I want to make with this list is to help introduce thinking about Palestine and the environment together as a canonical practice, but in particular where Palestinians' perceptions and experiences of their environment are foregrounded.
And so how would you like teachers and students to use your essential readings list as a pedagogical tool?
Well, I hope that the list of readings and my explanation for how I chose them will help educators and students interested in Palestine integrate environmental issues in general, and specifically Palestinian experiences of their environment in their work, whatever their other more important for them maybe thematic interests might be. So if someone's interested in nationalism or gender or violence or architecture or even poetry, my hope is that they will integrate these kinds of questions into their work as a kind of, by necessity, that slowly it will come to feel like a necessity to integrate those kinds of perspectives. And then the second hope I have is that the list will inspire teachers and students to take a more materialist view of Palestine and its occupation. So by that, I mean that this would be a view that considers the physical properties of different kinds of materials and how those properties make and change humans' experiences of the environment and how humans relate to each other. So here an example is like the fact that plastics got introduced at a certain point in Palestine, and then won't go away and won't disintegrate. So how does that affect life and politics in Palestine? And then the other way to be a kind of materialist in using a loose definition of the term materialist is to keep processes like capitalism and fields of practice like the natural sciences in mind when we think about other kind of classic spheres of social and political life that have been the center of research for a long time in Palestine studies, especially because Palestine studies has been thought in particular as a place understood through either ideology or kind of utilitarian resource scarcity.
And so that brings us to our final question, which is, what are your hopes for future scholarly conversations on the environment in Palestine and Palestine studies?
Yeah, I like being asked about hope. Hope is something we need more of these days. So I guess I hope in the future that we will see more robust research around the nexus of environment, health, and infrastructure. And in particular, thinking about how that nexus impacts and is impacted by race and racialization, thinking in particular about the histories of that in Palestine. And I guess I should say that I'm excited that Shireen Sekali and I are in the midst of planning a special issue of the Journal for Palestine Studies that will capture that nexus. And so I guess I encourage people to look out for that and to maybe do their own research in this direction. I think there should be a groundswell soon.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to it. Thank you so much, Professor Stamatopoulou-Robbins, for joining us today.
Thank you, Gabby.